Hi, Jamie. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Al. How are you?
Well, pretty good, thank you. Welcome, and it is nice to meet you. I just called outreach to you. I think we met on either CMO Alliance or Forbes. Where did we meet?
Yeah, I think it was the CMO Alliance.
CMO Alliance. It's a really good community, and
Hmm.
by no means I'm a CMO, but I work with a lot of CMOs.
Same.
Yeah, so I think that's where we connected, and we had some good conversations. But if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit more elaborately, that would be great.
Yeah, great. I'm Jamie Walsh. I am product marketing and go-to-market leader in SaaS for 12, a little over 20 years. 11 of
Wow.
those years I was spent at a company called BWise. It was part of NASDAQ. It was later sold to SAI Global, rebranded as SAI 360. They're in the governance, risk, and compliance space, if you understand where that's at.
Hmm.
I've done everything from GRC practitioner to consultant. Once I got to BWise and doing customer success and account management, it was a hybrid role I moved into eventually as a product manager, where I was also a product marketer at that point. And that's where my product marketing career really kind of took off, even though before that I had taken product marketing as an MBA. Moved
Cool.
through sales director and eventually landed as a full-time role in product marketing, and I've been working with B2B startups that are bridging between product market fit and go-to-market fit in that space, usually Series B to D.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask you what kind of startups, Series B or D. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. Yeah, really good intro. And I have a lot of respect for product marketers. As a digital marketer, I think that when SaaS and startup companies do realize that they need to employ a product marketer early on to drive the direction of go to market, they're a lot more successful. So let's just jump into that. I've seen a lot of a lot of startups start without a go to market. They just do something because it kind of works. We actually recently we worked with one, and and then some of them they do a go to market and product market fit, but it's not complete. It doesn't quite work out. So I know that's your expertise. If you have any input on that, of why that usually ends up being the case for a lot of startups.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of founders, they've nailed their product market fit, right? Usually
Mhm.
that's the early stage. And at that point, before then, you're really trying to sell it to anybody. You have a hypothesis, but you really don't know who's going to take your product and run with it. But if you ask like AI to cluster the signals, it usually tells a different story about like who's actually buying it. A lot of times founders are very rooted in their initial hypothesis, building a product and going to market, and eventually finding out that it's not quite the right fit for who they thought it was.
Mhm.
But it's good to know that the product market fit isn't the finish line. It's just the start towards the go to market fit, right? That's where
Yeah.
they start to scale things up. So
Yeah, that's a really if you don't mind explaining a little bit more, what is it? It's not a finish line, but
yeah,
it's what feeds into the go to market, right? And that's
yeah,
basically a necessity for a successful go to market. Is that correct?
yeah. I mean, initially the depending on how you're going to fund the company, right? If you're bootstrapping it, you're kind of running it however you decide to scale it. But when you start to take on seed money and private equity money or venture capital money, you really have to have some milestones and markers and things like that. And usually you've got 10 or so customers, maybe you're more, maybe you're getting small ticket item, you're getting 100 or 1,000 customers, and you're really starting to see a lot less churn.
Hmm.
Usually somewhere between 40-50% or better. And I tell people, product market fit is like getting into a good college, right? You've proven you're capable, but you have to perform
Sure.
at scale, right?
Yeah.
And so the systems that got you there, from the high school analogy, personal selling, being scrappy, don't always help you scale. And, that's where the real go to market work begins.
Yeah.
It's not really a time to kind of coast on what you got you there. It's time to start building infrastructure that supports things that are repeatable.
Got it. And how do you determine which infrastructure needs to be built? Is it based on the data you get from your marketing and sales efforts, or it's that, and who's responsible for coming up with that data? Is it a collective effort, or is it a person like CMO?
It should be a collective effort, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I feel like it works a lot better when the four horses are kind of running in the same direction, right? And I
sure.
call the four horses as product management,
Hmm.
the marketing team, and the sales, and then your customer success. Because at the end of the day, your customer success team is going to continue to manage that client and help feed the input back to product if you don't have the right tools that are monitoring things. So,
Yeah, so there has to be alignments between customer success,
mhm.
sales, see,
Yep.
marketing, and I really agree with you. I have worked with a lot of startups where that alignment doesn't exist, and it gets quite frustrating to tell you the truth, to be candid. When
Yeah.
there's no alignment between customer service and sales and marketing, and if anything, sometimes there is this competition, which is, I don't think is healthy, because
No.
especially in SaaS, and especially in enterprise SaaS, where it's very, very challenging. The customer or consumer life cycle is very long and complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your solution to kind of identify some of those, as we discussed earlier, hidden bottlenecks that stall go to market efforts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the real problem is if you can't diagnose the problem, you can't really fix
Hmm.
what's going on, or add. You're just going to add speed to a broken wheel, essentially.
Yeah.
So, you might find that you need to solve new problems, as your customer base as well as your products start to mature. So
Hmm.
that might attract new customers or new segments, but it also might involve new products. Um, in the if you're still targeting the same personas, the message itself might not be resonating as well. It gets stale after so long. I know as sales people and marketing people, you start to, you're a lot quicker to dismiss and get bored of your message, but
Yeah.
your audience is only hearing it once or twice every 6 months. But even then, 18 months or so, they start to get a little bored for it. It starts to drift, so to speak, to use an AI term.
Sure.
Or you're just speaking the wrong language to the wrong people, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're thinking that you're going to be talking to a lot of people in the banking world, and you find out that manufacturing or transportation is actually the better target. So
Yeah.
go where the money's at, right? Don't try to keep shoehorning it into financial services. It's just not efficient, and it really starts to demoralize the sales team, and it confuses the heck out of the buyers.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. In the digital marketing world, we have the concept of ad fatigue, where
Mhm.
ad gets especially in social media, you want to change it up both from creative and the offering, even if it may be the same product or service. Uh, and you pointed something out about having different messaging for different people. There's a buying committee, right, and a B2B world, and how do you, and they have different ranks. Some of our C-level, some are mid-level managers, some of our
Mhm.
actual practitioners, and you have to speak to all of them. But obviously, if you have to speak to the practitioners, you have to be a little more technical, whereas probably the directors and VPs and C levels a little bit high level. How do you figure that out? I've always been curious about that. Is it just you threw a bunch of different messaging, or do you really segment your efforts in a very like you do a lot of little segments for each one of them?
Yeah, so the first level segmentation I do is, by industry and other types of facts
Yeah.
and demographics, firmographics. But then you take it a little deeper, there's a lot of different people in the buying group as well as in a platform like a GRC. There's a
Mhm.
lot of different personas that are using the platform itself. So I always focus on one playbook at a time. And I
Mhm.
always look at, okay, what's the best opportunity, and we are going to look at from an industry vertical or a usage pattern, maybe a particular regulation in a particular country or something like that, and then go down a level deeper into all the people that are going to be involved in the buying and the usage of the product. That typically can be 4 people at minimum,
Hmm.
In some cases, it's 10. I usually stop at, building out 4 personas. And then there's a lot of things that are pretty general, like the procurement team or legal that have to get involved in that. They're not really buying the product or using the product, but they have to be involved in the process. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's starting to really get to understand what's their role in the process. Are they just part of the buying, or are they also going to be ingesting some of the information coming out of it? Are they going to actually be using the tool in some cases on a day-to-day basis, and
Yeah.
figuring out what that experience is like in their words, and start to use those words back to them.
Gotcha. And where do influencers like consultants like you and I and agency people like you and I fit in? And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that question. Our clients, when it comes to buying a new tool, be it an analytic tool, a CRM, a lot of times ask us for our feedback, and some of them really rely on our feedback. Uh, but what? How do you usually how do we treat people like the influencers in the decision making? They're not the decision makers. They're not even going to be using the product, but they're in they're influencing the decision making. How do you segment them? What type of messaging do you usually have for them? Is it more of a not worry about them right now and just be really good at your specific audience?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I love to know what do you think about that,
Yeah,
those.
in the world that I've been in, I've had both. So
Yeah.
we have reseller partners as well as advisory partners that do services like the big four of the world, the EYs and KPMGs,
Hmm.
as well as on the analyst side, who influence a lot of buying decisions. You have Gardner and you
Sure.
have Forrester, and I've worked extensively with both of them, and you really have to really understand what it is that they perceive the market to be,
Hmm.
and to give them a lot of room to tell you exactly what it is that they see, but also give them some things to think about in terms of the way that your product is just being positioned, and really be thoughtful in why you are doing the things that you do in your offer, as well as technically within the product, and make sure you have great answers for those questions that are sure to come.
Sure.
Um, with our partner ecosystem, they're incentivized obviously to sell the product, but they also see a number of products. None of them are single exclusive partners
Hmm.
to the products that I sell. So, they give us a lot of inside information. You know, let's just say this diplomatically. They'll tell us one way or the other without being too specific because of their non-disclosures. But they give us a lot of guidance. I've used some of our partners to help us craft our positioning a little bit better, and even give us guidance in terms of the product roadmap and things that they're seeing that just are product gaps that we need to fill.
So basically, yeah, you just answered the question that I poorly formed. Sorry, is that you
No.
you basically include those influencers as part of your go-to-market strategy?
Hmm.
You
Oh
actually
yeah.
include it, yeah. Because I've seen a lot of go-to-market strategies that don't include that, and I think that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons a lot of them don't work out as well as you know they should. You mentioned something about AI recently. How much AI do you use, and how do you use it when you're crafting your when you're working your product market fit and then creating a go-to-market strategy?
Al, the answer is not enough.
Not enough.
Right. I mean, the reality is that everybody is trying to work faster. Everybody's trying to get more and more information out there, digesting a lot of information to make great decisions with. Um, so, what I've been a consultant and done a lot of process
Hmm.
engineering in the past. So, as a product marketer, I have a framework in which I work.
Yeah.
It's somewhat waterfall, but I'm now working in more of an agile approach where I am doing some of the strategic work, like doing analysis and looking at past data, and using LLMs to digest a lot of call information, or just data that we have exported out of our CRM. Lots of information that they can grab off of websites. So I'll give them a list of our competitors and pull a lot of their information and give us some guidance on what the differentiation is, value props, and things like that. And then you get into automation tools to try to connect the dots between things. So I go from analyzing that information, determining where is our greatest opportunity, making a decision to move forward with that, and then taking that information and start to build content foundations like
Hmm.
messaging, positioning, value propositions, et cetera, and really starting to do the work of then creating an outline of what are we going to provide on launch day, what are we going to provide in the weeks lead after launch day for 3 months out, figuring out what channels we're going to be using, using tools like SparkToro to like
Hmm.
figure out where are our people hiding out the most and
Yeah.
targeting those channels rather than being everywhere and anywhere.
Hmm.
um, Man, I could go on for hours talking about the different places of using that. And then you get on the other side of the fence. Once you do the enablement of your sales team, manually, you're also giving them tools to help promote your message through LinkedIn. Giving them some prompts to help them, generate their own social posts, etc. Building out outlines for webinars or live events that we're going to be doing, or podcasts like this.
Hmm.
Um, and then, you get into things like the SDR scripts, help them to, test different variations of the same message, feeding it with uh, examples so that it can output the way that we want things to be output.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. You brought up Sparktoro. I've dabbled with the tool. I don't use it regularly. How do you like it? And now talk about tools. What are the tools you use part of the process?
Yeah, I mean, I like SparkToro. I've only dabbled in it a bit just to sort of directionally understand where we can find the most of our audience. And I'm sure that there's a lot more things that Rand and his team have put
Yeah.
together that I haven't used. Um, geez, AirOps I've used for going through a structured approach to creating content and
Hmm.
messaging. I'm finding now that I'm actually using ChatGPT a lot more.
Hmm.
I've done some things in terms of building out my own custom GPTs, or
Yeah.
standard prompts that I've used to build
Hmm.
out a competitive analysis, or digesting a bunch of information from a spreadsheet that I've downloaded out of Salesforce. Um, I'm now running a newsletter generation tool for looking at all the AI tools that I'm actually touching on a regular basis. Give me a second. I'm trying to recall
Yeah.
all
Feel
of
free
them,
to
but
forward it to me, and I will add it at the end to this list. But
yeah,
yeah, I think there's just so many tools out there. I keep running into one, but I still keep going back to ChatGPT and Perplexity and a couple other tools that I use on a regular basis.
yeah,
Um, and one thing you brought up about that I was going to ask you about prompting. I recently finished. I went using ChatGPT from almost early on when it came out, but I recently finished a series of courses on Coursera
mhm,
about proper prompting, and my ChatGPT game changed a lot.
yeah,
And I highly suggest that to almost anyone, especially marketers, because
mhm,
the world changed. The way you prompt, the different type of prompts you can have, and then of course custom GPTs, and then and all of this is eventually going to lead to agentic AI and things like that. And I think marketers are in the forefront of all this, because a lot of things we used to do manually or we couldn't even do before, now we can actually do it using ChatGPT and other AI tools, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I found it as a structures, and it's a lot of it is tools that I connect into. Like I've been trying to test out Gamma a little bit more in terms of just presentations and
I
things
just
like
used it
that.
today as
Yeah, for
a
carousels.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I used it today to
Yeah,
create a wireframe, because our designer was busy and she's always busy and backed up. I'm like, you know what? I need a landing page for a
hmm
paid campaign, and I don't have. I'm not gonna create a Jira ticket for it and wait for it. And let's see what Gamma. So Gamma does presentation, but also does landing pages. And the landing page was pretty good. I passed it to our web developer with some tweaks, and I'm like, okay, this is what I want. Code this. So it's
Yeah.
a pretty powerful tool. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Recently this week, I built a lead magnet for just my own services out
Hmm.
at level through Lovable. So I've
Hmm.
been dabbling with that. Back in the day before I was in product marketing, I was a
Yeah.
product manager, but also I was a software developer. So being able to do vibe coding through Lovable
Yeah.
helps like scratch an itch that I didn't realize was still there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm way out of my league in terms of getting into the code and doing it myself. But this was actually pretty easy. I couldn't get the email functionality to work,
Yeah.
but you'll have those things.
I haven't used that tool yet, but I will definitely check it out after the call. And yeah, I'm the same way. I coded over 2 decades ago, and now I'm I could probably use AI to get some scripts and codes, but yeah, I'm
Hmm.
nowhere close to. I don't have the mindset. I'm too much on the marketing and business side right now to be
Right.
able to code anything. Um, Talking about consulting, because this is what you do as consultants. But one of the challenges that I see when it comes to driving marketing sales effort for startups is being a consultant, not in house. There's
Hmm.
how do you that's not just an IQ, that's more of an EQ thing, right? How do you deal with some of those challenges where you have as an external vendor working with startups?
Well, the funny thing is I actually find that your your approach and your suggestions often are accepted a little bit more easily as a consultant, as an expert outside
Hmm.
than from in-house.
Yeah,
Um, I can't explain that, but
it
I
makes
think
sense.
I think it
Yeah.
has to do with the payment terms and the fact that you're bringing somebody from the outside in. They surely better know what the heck they're doing,
Yes.
from that perspective, you don't have performance management that you're looking on over them to some degrry. So
They're not
that
involved in the internal politics. They
yeah, you don't have to deal with
have
this.
no
I mean,
equity in the company. They're not biased.
I will tell you in this role though, you kind of get caught up a little bit in some of
Hmm.
the internal politics. You're from my perspective, a lot of times you're dealing with a group that's siloed, right? The
Yeah.
sales is going this way, marketing is another direction, but trying to bring them together and understand, like, if we all work together from start to the finish in terms of the time that they see us and are aware of us through the time that they're demonstrating the product and we're winning that deal until they sign a
Yeah.
new agreement or expand their services or potentially leave us, that whole thing has to flow and it has to have the same consistent message, or you'll start to see a lot more churn in the end, or conversions dropping off if they start to get confused by different versions of the same message.
Got it. Cool. Really cool. I'm gonna ask you another question, and I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you work with a startup and you work really hard to come up with this strategy and messaging framework, and everything's working fine, but the startup is obviously owned by, let's say, VC firm, and then they have another
Hmm.
firm, and they're like, okay, we're gonna merge these two companies, or we're gonna buy another company to put on top of this company. It happens a lot, right? Um,
Hmm.
and and then they have their own go-to-market strategies. So now you're dealing with these different go-to-market strategies.
Yeah.
How do you work that out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to my days as a product manager slash product marketer at BWise while it was still owned by NASDAQ. There were certain things in terms of the brand message that we needed to have consistency with. And, sometimes the parent company has a direction that they're trying to follow
Hmm.
and, push you towards, I'll say, that just isn't the right fit. And
Yeah.
you're seeing different signals that are saying this is probably the right way to go, but they want you to go in this other direction. And ultimately, I think that's what ended up happening at BWise, is why we were ended up selling off, because I think that the synergy that NASDAQ thought that they were going to have with us just didn't ended up working out.
Hmm.
Um, Moving aside then to my time with SAI Global, there was four different business units, and I think we did have a lot of autonomy in terms of what we were trying to do in the GRC space. So there wasn't a ton of disruption or conflict there in terms of the messaging. Um, in Archer had none of that. The private equity company that was there as I got in there had a lot of faith in what we were doing, and we're actually rebuilding. I would say rebranding, but kind of reestablishing ourselves as a solo company, and we're able to really move things in the direction that we saw fit.
Yeah, got it, got it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I personally have been in that situation a lot. Where that happens. We either you work with a startup, like they get acquired, or they acquire another startup, and they're trying to connect the dots. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle, and just looking at it from my perspective, performance marketing and SEO and things like that. Sometimes it gets very overwhelming, especially if you don't have a lot of say in things as an external vendor. And I've noticed that we usually take a step back and we just advise and consult rather than really actually getting, because it's layers of bureaucracy that we have to deal with. And
Yeah. What I found, Al, is in any place where I've seen that, I've always asked to see some of the data, because
Mhm.
it's hard to really dive in and create great messaging if you don't have the same insights, right?
Yeah,
So going down a level deeper to say, like, that's interesting. I'm not seeing that with the data. Here's the data set that I'm sharing with you that's leading me in this direction, but I'm happy to see what you're seeing, so
yeah,
that I can make sure that if there's further questions I have to ask, or deeper analysis I need to do to make sure that what we're going to say actually aligns. And sometimes they're like, oh, it's interesting, let me see your data. And
yeah.
sometimes you can get the minds to change, but not always.
Sure. No,
Usually,
yeah. I mean,
I think,
that's a
yeah.
really good. I mean, data usually is in telling a story with your data. The data actually, the people are the higher ups care about. I think that's really
Mhm.
important. Just so that's a really good tip. Um, I think I'm kind of running out of questions. I think I have one more question for you. The go-to-market strategies, are they like one and done things, or do we revisit them every 6 months or every year based on the data we get?
Yeah, no, I mean, what I say is that it's complete, but it's never finished, right?
Yeah.
So we have a hypothesis. We try to move forward quickly. I like to get the analysis done in a month, the creative done in a month, and design, and then doing enablement, and then moving on to execution. I'm trying to move that execution up a little bit sooner.
Hmm.
AI is affording me some of the opportunities to sort of shorten that timeline, but at the end, you still have people that need to hear the message, be able to repeat the message, understand what the reasoning is behind it before they go out and run with it. Um, pardon me. Um, Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The Sorry, had
We're
to
talking
answer
about
the
running.
question again.
You were talking about the go-to-market strategy. We want on time, one and done
Oh
thing,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you just said it's like an ongoing thing. It's never finished.
yeah. It's never finished, but I mentioned earlier that I do one playbook at a time, right?
Yeah.
And in your ideal customer profile, there's likely multiple segments that you're going to be running with, and
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you have something for everybody. I would typically say after we've done the enablement and start running it with execution, we're monitoring it, but we're not going to make dramatic changes unless something is dramatically going wrong for a couple of months. Um, and yes, like you said, it gets stale. I would say probably no sooner than 12 months are you
Yeah.
making dramatic changes. But what I also like to do is sort of layer them on there. So this quarter, we're building out this playbook, and then we're going to run with it. In the next quarter, we're going to be building out another playbook that also runs in parallel to that, and giving the teams enough diversity to run with, and have a number of things that they can fall back on in terms of the playbook to execute, so
Hmm.
that they're not just sort of banging down one tree that they might find out that due to market conditions or something like that, that well is dry and we have to go in some other direction for another well to go fishing.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought up the market condition. I, as a, we've noticed a lot with the tariffs and stuff like that. A lot of businesses have been impacted, and this is probably something a lot their go-to-market strategy didn't take into consideration when they created a year ago, right? So
Mhm.
basically, a good go-to-market strategy will have some room and space for you to be able to react to the markets. Is that correct?
For sure. I've always suggested that, with all the messaging that we have some alternatives just,
Hmm.
in the back pocket so that
Got it.
if you do see some things that aren't going right, that you have
Hmm.
some things that you can quickly whip up. That's the other reason I always say, like, the whole playbook isn't going to be done on day one.
Hmm.
It's going to be the essential stuff like the talking tracks, pitch deck, the SDR scripts that are going to be used early in the buying journey. And over time, we'll start to continue to deliver those other things. And, the plan for what's going to come in month one, month two, month six could change over time as we're starting to see some of those things. We just sort of putting outlines together, topics that we're going to be talking about, the mode and the channels that we're going to be using. That plan is sort of set in stone, but it does have room to move as we move down the path and start to see things that are either getting hot or just going cold.
Very cool. Awesome. I think we're almost running out of time. I think I want to ask you about, you said you work as a consultant fractional,
Mhm.
whatever the right title is. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the services you offer and what your website is and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I created a website called GTM Factories. So for
Hmm.
Go to Market Factories, I look at the, very procedural, very structured. So that was natural fit for me in terms of the analogy. But I do look at the process as an assembly line to get things done. I have some very time tested frameworks and SOPs that I've written for myself to get things done. I've worked with agencies to hand things over to them to expedite some things that I'm not very good at or not
Hmm.
very quick at. Worked with teams of 4 to 10 over the years to deliver things. Um, in a lot of cases, we can get a lot done in a month. So right now, I'm focusing on what I call 30 days to clarity, which
Hmm.
is all about really understanding who your ideal customer profile is, who are you really actually selling to, why are you winning, and really giving you a great leg up to revisit the content that you're putting out there, the talk tracks you're putting out there, new SDR scripts. I like to work with SDRs a lot to
Hmm.
test messaging as I'm
Yeah.
building it. That's one of those areas where you can try to sort of do more of an agile approach versus a waterfall approach to go to
Sure.
market. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I'm glad you mentioned the SDRs because with AI, it's even easier to kind of figure all that out. Like listening to call transcriptions, dumping in Chat GPT to make sense of it and see what type of pain points are out there. We do that a lot. We use that a lot to come up with like content for like blogging and stuff like that. And yeah, we do work with people like yourself, and other fractional CMOs that do a lot of stuff. So when you said the agency thing and that we're on the same boat, we don't do go to market as an agency, but we pull in contractors or people like yourself. So totally understandable. I guess did I leave anything out that you would want to discuss about today about a topic?
no, I mean, I finally found the sort of list of the areas that AI can help. We talked about a couple of them using pattern
Yeah.
detection,
Hmm.
with AI tools. With the call transcription is a great piece. If you're not doing that yet, get on it. I know in the EU there's a lot of challenges with
Hmm.
data privacy and getting consent and all that. But nonetheless, if you have that data, absolutely use it. Doing audits of your existing CRM content, figuring out like how can I go backfill some of this information, look through old old scanned in contracts to feed in information around spend, how often people are buying. Those types of signals help you determine who are in fact your best customers, those that are engaging with you more often and investing more and more in you. But it's funny how often that data is just not there.
Yeah.
The ability to sort of like look at, I talked about the win loss. We talked about Gamma. That's been a great tool for me to be able to just like quickly
Yeah.
jot down. I do this thing where I go and I will dictate an outline of a talk track or even a pitch deck, and then I'll spit that into Gamma to have it, just generate a quick and dirty version of the pitch deck. It's fantastic. I mean, I didn't use the tool up until the last month and a half because the last time I used it, I didn't find it so good. Whatever they've done, they've corrected it
It's
quite
got
a
a lot
lot.
better. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
actually customize it with your colors and stuff.
yeah.
It's pretty exciting. I'm liking it more and more. I agree with you.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for ChatGPT. Over the last couple of months, I was using a bunch of different tools for video generation and image generation,
Yeah.
and now I'm finding that if it doesn't produce the image exactly the way I want, it's at least giving me a fantastic prompt to drop into Leonardo or to Runway or to Midjourney or
Hmm.
something like that can really speed things up. But yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. So that's it for the go-to-market topics. I do like to ask you a few
Mhm.
personal questions.
Sure.
When you're not strategizing marketing and when you're not working, what are you doing? What are some of your hobbies?
Oh, well, my wife is a full-time artist, and mother as well.
Mhm.
We have two daughters that are, teenagers. So the three of them keep me busy
Yeah.
with dance and field hockey and just all kinds of other extracurricular stuff. My wife does one or two shows a month that are usually outside of the Pittsburgh area. We do like two or three that are in Pittsburgh, but she goes as far as DC and down to Florida,
Mhm.
over to Cleveland, and sometimes into the Great Lakes. So that's for them. For myself, I like to get out and walk a lot, but golfing
Golfing. Yeah.
is on my list to get back into.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh area, you can only do it from May until about September-ish,
And it
October-ish,
gets cold, right?
and then it gets cold now.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. And the well, basically, you answer a couple of questions. So I think the last question I would have for you would be, if you could be a superhero, which superhero would you be?
Oh, um, well, I've adopted Captain America quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
Through happenstance. I don't know what it is about that story, but the fact that he's rather resilient,
Hmm.
I would say, and strength, compassionate, right? That those are the three things that I look at in him. And the Dutch guys that I used to work with always kid because I would come over there and they stuck a Captain America because of the American on the team.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess that was two questions, right? And then I guess the third question would be: do you watch sports, or
Mhm.
what's your favorite sports? Who's your team? Obviously, Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been here all my life, so I'm a diehard Steeler fan, and
Still a
the Pirates, break my heart every year.
fan.
I wish they would do better, but that's not going to happen. The Penguins they go through ebbs and flows. They're in a sort of a downtime in the hockey world right now. But I have hopes that they'll pick it back up again.
Yeah,
Those are
let's see.
the three main ones. Yeah.
Cool. Are you going to be at any of the CMA Alliance conferences that are upcoming?
You know what? I have to take a look. There's a lot of things that I have to plan around, my wife and my daughter's, things. So if I
There's one
can
in
make
San
it to one.
Francisco. There's one in San Francisco in September that we are sponsoring. So
Oh, okay.
if we go, we'd love to see you in person.
Yeah, I would love to meet you in person as well. There's a lot of people that I haven't gotten a chance to meet in person. I try to
Yeah.
do coffee chats on a regular basis to meet two or three a week, but
Yeah, this is a new
So
norm: Zooms and conference calls, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
cool. Well, Jamie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we were able to do this happen, and I hope we can work together at some point down the road.
Yeah, that would be great, Al.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right.